We are live. All right. So this is episode 18. This is the new season almost, you could say. But after a little hiatus, a little break for the summer, I regenerate my or re-energize the energy, mix some things up. We'll wait till everybody gets on. But Kevin, thanks for being on here, man.
Thanks for having me. Happy to jam with you today for
Yeah.
sure.
So we'll just give a few minutes for people to jump on, and just going to start with a little bit of gratitude for you taking this time out of your busy schedule and your life to bring your energy to this space. Getting to be a part of an event that you hosted a few weeks ago is really affected me in a beautiful way. So I just thought it'd be amazing that you could come on here and share a little bit of kind of what you do, and some info, some insights, some knowledge, and some wisdom. So thanks, brother.
You're welcome. Yeah, so grateful.
Cool. All right. So this is episode 18. Like I said, a little bit of a break. Thanks for being here. I'm Marjorie, Cassidy, Devin, Deborah. We'll just kind of jump right into it, man. Kevin, tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of what you do, what you're doing right now. Just kind of a little bio, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. I've got a clinic in Vernon, BC, and it is a Chinese medicine focused clinic. Although that's maybe an oversimplification. We do a lot of work with chronic illness. We do work with mystery syndromes, undiagnosed conditions, and many other elements as well. And that's what kind of lights me up is, finding the things that haven't been found, doing, deep dive investigation. We do a lot of toxicity testing there. I've got some other practitioners that are tremendous that work there too. We've got another TCM guy, Grant.
Okay.
He's amazing, and kind of been shuffling most of the acupuncture over to him because I'm so busy these days, and kind of focus more on the toxicity side of things and the deeper elements wherever I can. And then we've got a couple of massage therapists there too. Pam does body talk and Sarah does gene keys as well on the side. And so I feel like we're all pretty dynamic human beings, and we all are super passionate about health and wellness and healing, and that's dovetailed into doing events and retreats. And so I do one-on-one private retreats and other ones called Collective Hearts, and just really love to get that deep time with people. And I find, and I'm curious about your work with people as well, that when we get time together, then things unfold and stuff comes to the surface that doesn't always show up in a few minutes. And so I'm really grateful that I've got lots of these different avenues that I get to work with people on, and it usually leads to good transformation one way or the other. So that's a bit about me.
So thank you for that. And I'm going to just kind of touch on how we met and the synchronistic, all the synchronicities that kind of came about. Randomly, I posted a video. I think it was a video or a picture of a black widow outside of my place here in Vernon. And sure, I don't know how I don't know if was it a reel? I don't know if you were following me. I might have followed you somehow, but you just commented, "Oh, wow." And then you're like, "I hope I don't have any here." And I said, "Oh, where are you?" You're like, "I'm in Vernon." I'm like, "Dude, you have them. I'm in Vernon." Or I haven't seen any yet. You said something like that.
Yeah.
And we kind of started a, loose back and forth here and there. You kind of asked me a little bit what I did, and same. And what I found really awesome is we started talking, I don't know, probably a few months later. And I don't know what it was really about. I don't know if you remember, but I remember you saying you had a retreat coming up and an event for the equinox. And first thing, what do? I go into, how can I help? Right away. How can I serve? How can I be of service? How can I, even entrepreneurially thinking, oh, how I can help in the community. Maybe there's more, or I can expand here. And, you were grateful, saying, thanks, but everything's kind of wrapped up on that. We got everything figured out. Why don't you come, be a guest? And I'm like, oh, I'll think about it. And what was it? 2 days later, you messaged me and you're like, I really think you should come. How did that go?
Yeah, I was actually just walking in a beautiful park in Vernon at the time, and I get information about things in all kinds of different ways, and maybe we'll dive into that more too. And for me, learning about how information comes into my being or my brain, I don't even
Yeah.
know where it drops in sometimes, and I don't
Hmm.
always know where it comes from, but I'll get an impulse to reach out to somebody, and I'm sure this happens for lots of people too. We just call it synchronicity, and you're thinking about them and they text you in that
Yeah.
moment, or anything. And I was thinking about the event that we were going to be doing at Equinox there, and I don't even know what it was. Like, you came to mind really strongly,
Yeah.
and I just felt like I think he's supposed to be there, but I also want to be mindful that I'm not just messaging people all the time like, you need to come to my event, and you and
Yeah.
actually all of you, everybody just needs to
Right.
come. And so I'm pretty selective about who I message just generally anyway. And I thought, I'm just gonna trust this impulse or this information that I'm getting, and I'm just gonna reach out. And I know you do healing work in the
Yeah.
community and with people, and through this format too. And I've had this sort of intention building over the last few years of healing the healers, and
Yeah, brother.
like giving people
Yeah.
support that are often supporting other people. And this can be moms, this can be dads, this can be people in the community, but there's people that are often supporting and holding space for so many. And I don't want those people to go overlooked just because they're really capable
Yeah.
or they've got this. And most other people say, oh no, Joey, he's good all the time. He's got this. And so whatever that was, I was like, hey, maybe why don't you just come and just be a participant? You don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
You can just be, you can quietly just sit in the back or hide. Like, you could do whatever you want, but just come and be supported. And it seemed like that message got through to you.
It's hit me again the same way it hit me the first time. So he came back in the DMs and sent me that message. Why don't you just come and be a part of it? Why don't you come and receive? And it wasn't 10 seconds. And my viewers, I cry all the time, so we're good with that. But I started bawling, and I messaged you midway. I'm like, dude, I just wanted to, I was trying to catch my breath, and you could feel it in me. I was just like, wow, like I didn't realize, how much, not necessarily how much I give, because that's not where I was really meant by it, but how much I haven't really allowed myself to receive something like that. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I can just go and receive. I'm allowed to just go and be amongst others going through this journey. And it just rocked me. And I said yes right away. I said, absolutely, I'm in. I just knew it in the, my gut was boom, being a generator, my sacral was like, F yes, And so going to this event, I had really zero expectation, number one, which was huge, because that was something I'd been struggling with in the past months, with my business and creating and
Mm.
content and all these things. And we often think we're surrendering, but how often are we truly surrendering to the flow? And so I was in a little bit, there was some resistance going on in my life. And that event really allowed me to see that. And I went in with it. And I think I was 5 minutes in the door and I started crying again, just feeling the energy of 120, 130 people, amazing souls in this space that are all on this a similar journey, here to hold space, heal. And yeah, I knew right then and there, I was like, okay, I'm in the right place.
Oh, beautiful. I'm
Yeah.
feeling that energy move through my body again, because there is something about that building that we're in,
Right.
Cedar Ridge Guest Ranch. There's
Hmm.
been a lot of beautiful, like, celebratory, joyous events that have been held there, weddings especially.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons I chose that space, is I could feel it when I went in there the first time, and I couldn't stop smiling of, there's some powerful energy in here, and what could we do with that, and how could we build that? And then of course we intentionally build an energy container and vortex for
Yeah.
these things. And I know you're pretty tuned in, and so I think you would have been feeling that, but you would have been feeling all the other people, because what I noticed about that group, everybody there, and I said something about it on stage, is, you might be empathic or intuitive or psychic or something of this nature if you're sitting
Hmm.
in this room,
Hmm.
and it's okay here, and it's okay to be yourself. And
And when
there's
you could feel the goosebumps on everyone there when you said those, when you did say that, it was pretty powerful.
well,
Uh-huh.
because I've noticed and I'll just speak as like somebody who grew up in rural farming community in Alberta, being an empathic, super feeling machine wasn't something that necessarily you could speak about openly. And I didn't even know how to speak about it anyway. I just thought
Yeah.
this is just how I am. I didn't
Yeah.
know any different. But
Yeah.
yeah, it turns out I was pretty sensitive also. And when I say sensitive, for like for you as well, but for all of us, I looked at as a real gift.
Mm-hmm.
But it can take quite a bit of time to realize it's a gift. And then how do we actually work with that? And then it can be a superpower once we kind of get in the flow with that. But what a learning, like over the years of being able to connect with that a little bit deeper. And so it was really cool to be on the stage there. And I felt so grateful to be able to lead in that way, to feel that I was being felt and I could feel
Yeah.
everybody else,
Wow.
and that we could all just receive each other, and
Yeah.
we don't have to be anybody else other than like naturally who we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It, it's something that I noticed with you being on stage and the way you were leading, and it hit me so hard is, well, how the intention you put behind this retreat. You could feel the energy and the container you created. And I think you talked about it. You were on that land for a few weeks, going back and forth, and putting your feet in the grass and really setting that intention, well ahead of time. And I'll
Yeah.
circle back to intention and the power of that. But you could feel it. You knew going in that this wasn't just, okay, I got a couple weeks and we'll go there on the day before and we'll just make it happen. You felt the energy before you got there, I think. So tell me about how you did that. Like, is this something you do every retreat, or has it grown? How you set that intention, how you maybe pray, how you kind of set the
Yeah.
mood or set the energy?
This goes back a few years for sure, because I've been doing in-person retreats for over 3 years, I guess. And then I've been
Yeah.
working in the clinic for almost 14.
Right.
And doing retreats and like deep dive healing events was something that had been on my mind for like a decade, and it just didn't feel like time, or maybe I didn't feel ready. And then I finally felt ready, and I had attended retreats, and it was this deep knowing inside of like, I can do this, but I know I'm meant to do this. And then it was that culmination of feeling, I feel ready as we'll ever get, of,
Yeah.
well, I need to learn more, do another, course, or read some more books, and then I'll be ready. But I could feel like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what, let's do this. So being sensitive to energy and being very intentional in how I've showed up in the clinic over years, then for sure it just seemed like a natural intention to set before an event, is really, tune in and connect with my own guides and healers and angels
Yep.
and,
Yep.
spirit animals. You can
Yep.
call them whatever you want, but I know we're all guided. And I felt so supported at times in this life where it was so palpable, where you're just experiencing like grace in some way, and you can just feel it moving through your system. And so I wanted to really offer that for other people. If I was going to be holding space in different locations, that I really wanted to connect with the physical location too.
Mm-hmm.
So every retreat I've ever done, I will go there beforehand. And I've led retreats in Banff and lots in Tofino, and I'd always go there before. And if I can, I'll go to the venue that I'm going to be
Right.
leading. That's my preference. And I'll spend time there, but solo. And then I'll do meditation, prayer, connect with the
Yep.
land. And I ask permission as well
Mm-hmm.
from the land itself, and from these spaces. And even if there's buildings there, then I'm talking to the building too.
Yeah.
Like, hey, can we do this here? And to date, I haven't been turned down. So I'm,
Right.
I'm grateful.
Right.
But that's kind of the first step before anything moves from there, is it has to kind of be right, and it has to be in alignment, and I need to feel it. And I want the land or the place that we're going to be to really feel me and my intention of showing up. And I always ask for help. Like, can you help me do an event like this? You can already feel the intention, and I just communicate in that nonverbal way, or sometimes
Yeah.
I'll speak as like,
Yeah.
hey, all the spirits of the land,
Yeah.
I'm honoring and seeing you, and I feel you. Would you be open to me doing an event
Right.
here that's like this? And if I do, I'd even love some help with that. Could you help me hold
Yeah.
space with this? And I think for some people, and probably a lot in that room at Equinox, they could feel that it wasn't me they were feeling, or maybe partly me,
Right.
but it's all of those things,
Right.
because there's so much more that we know is beyond us as individuals. So
Yeah. Well, it's something I work with constantly as the guides, and I talk about it openly. And it wasn't always easy to talk about the guides because I didn't even know what the guides were.
yeah,
And it took a lot of my own inner work to realize, like, holy shit, like I'm not alone. Like I am divine. Like I feel them on my shoulders now. Like I often feel hands on my shoulders. And I know everyone is unique and experiences their guides and their angels differently. So, like, what would you say? What is your observation with when do you introduce this to your clients? Like, do you try to guide them a little bit in understanding, like, you do have a team? Because it's a little tough sometimes. Like
yeah.
my following, pretty much, like my meditations are often surrounded by bringing in the guides, and that's a big deal for me. But how do you kind of bring that up with people you're working with?
Well, there's definitely a time and sort of a bridge between like having things that I would do at like retreats back into the clinic, and sort
Right.
of the clinic into retreats, because these patterns and my own limiting beliefs for the longest time, which is why I didn't lead retreats for a while,
Of course.
and I think there's some organic preparation in that, of, having a good decade in the clinic, and just
Sure.
I needed to learn a lot. And I'm grateful for what I did learn, and I still learn. But I remember feeling like, no, you're a doctor of Chinese medicine. You work in a clinic. This
Right.
is what you're trained to do. You do
Yeah.
acupuncture and herbal medicine. And I was already deviating from that path, and, trained in
Yes.
homeopathy and biological medicine and environmental toxins and viruses and bacteria. And I love that stuff because I found it so impactful for people's health.
Right.
And then I also felt this calling is like, yeah, but if I wanted to pull out a drum or something and
Yeah.
drum in the clinic, what would my patients think of me?
Yep.
Who is this guy? I came to
Yep.
see this doctor and now he's doing all this funky stuff. So I kind of
Yeah.
kept that hidden for quite some time and just tried to be, Kevin clinician,
Right.
doctor persona. And then as I started doing retreats, then I felt like this whole other
Yeah.
energy coming through, and
Yeah.
is like permission is like, well, we're in Banff, we're by the mountains. Like, of
Let's
course you
go.
can,
Yeah.
drum and do breath work and all these
Yeah.
things that I didn't believe were acceptable in the clinic. And maybe they would have been received. So I found this kind of split of loving the clinic and then loving being in nature and in retreats, and being in nature is where I'm happiest. And especially in nature, I know you can feel this too. We can harness the energy that's available in the waterfalls and the trees and the
Yeah.
lakes and the mountains for healing. It's like
Absolutely.
it does at least half the healing work for us anyway. So why wouldn't we want to take healing into an environment that way? And then over time, it's like those started coming closer together. And I
Yeah.
remember this is a few years ago now. I did some drumming in a private, like, clinic session with the patient, as somebody I had known for a long time, and I said, "Hey, while we're doing acupuncture, I just feel called for some reason. I'm just gonna follow this, I'm supposed to do some drumming. Are you open to that?" And they said, "Yeah." And it was super powerful for them and for
Yeah.
me, and they had a
Yeah.
profound healing,
Yeah.
and I just felt grateful. It's like I received a healing in that too. There's like, wait a minute, we can blend clinic and retreats, and we can start moving these things back and forth together, because it was just me wanting to be me. I've always been drawn to all these other practices. I've learned a lot about them. And I've also realized how powerful they are in helping people on their healing journey. So why would I hold that back
Yeah.
in a clinic setting and only do the things inside a box? It's just so limiting for them and for me. And I didn't want to limit patients' like expansion. So then I was like, all right, you know what? No, let's do it all over the place. And certainly I do things differently in the clinic compared to
Sure.
retreats, but
Yeah.
sometimes they're kind of close.
Wow, that hits so hard for me because leaving, going into to hypnotherapy school and learning about parts work and regression work, and learning about the subconscious, and the safety of everything and the protocols, and everything was very much in the book. I remember
Yeah.
leaving and going, having my notes and going by the book for everything. And the same thing with me, man. It just started to just morph into this. And it's like being pulled to add this into there and understand and ask different questions. And I was like, no, I can't do that. Like I gotta stay here. And it was probably a good year and a half, almost 2 years of staying in the lines. but there was this pull of me just to trust this guidance and how to lead, and understanding like now, like the subconscious is this gateway to the quantum, to the soul, to our lives, to everything really. And
Yeah.
so what we can access using these deeper states of consciousness is still, I don't see, there you go. We haven't even scratched the surface.
Yeah.
And every week I have something new happen because I'm not staying in the box, because
Yeah.
I'm asking different questions and I'm calling different guides forward. And I'm allowing my clients to have communication with their loved ones that have passed. And like things happen in this realm. And it's just, I wouldn't be where I'm at if I'd have stayed between the lines and being the hypnotherapist.
Yeah.
I don't want to play there no more.
Yeah.
Like there's no
Yeah.
fire there anymore. And now it's just, I just like, see, I just major energy flowing right now. It's just so beautiful to trust that pull. And same with, you said about the drum. Last week, I brought my Tibetan bowl out during a session with a client and I just brought it in. I never asked. It just happened. And I'd never brought that into a one-on-one session before. And the sound, the vibration, you understand that what it brings to that experience, and, the spirit that we're connecting to was just unbelievable.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Well, and there's this interesting thing that I think it's okay to kind of color between the lines
Yeah.
for a while, and
Sure.
maybe we all need to start there. And in my case, I went to this program in school, and then I went to
Right.
another program in school, and then I took a lot of courses, and I'm grateful for all of that
Of course.
because it did help like build more confidence over time.
Yeah.
And added to my skill set and added these tools. And then I think you start to get comfortable with the tools. And then that curiosity is like, wait a minute, if I can do this with these tools, like what other tools do I really connect and resonate with? And,
Mm-hmm.
For me, acupuncture was where I began with a lot of that. And again, whether it's, past life or the remembering that we go through. I grew up in rural Alberta with like zero exposure to alternative medicine of any kind. And, I'm grateful for that part of my journey too, because it prepared me for what I was going to get into next.
Sure.
But when I finally received acupuncture, it woke something up inside me.
Yeah.
And I became immediately curious, which I just thought was normal. But other people were like, why would you be interested in that? I'm like, why wouldn't you be?
Yeah, right.
And then following that up, and also that deep knowing is, I need to follow this impulse. And I was in science at the time. And, I'd done 3 years of science and was kind of going more the Western medicine route, and, series of synchronous events and injuries and all these other things. And pretty soon I'm being pulled, you talk about that pull to, I got to explore Chinese medicine. I don't even know much about it, but I know I need to follow this impulse. And,
Gosh, so
these
funny.
like strong impulses where something deeper. And it was so funny telling people, hey, I'm gonna move out of Alberta and I'm gonna move to Vancouver, which was a big deal at the time because I hadn't really been anywhere. And I'm gonna learn Chinese medicine. And I got so many questions, and I think good questions like, Kevin, are you doing something wise? I had questioned myself, is like, am I doing something wise? I don't know, but I know I need to follow this.
100%.
Because if I don't, I'm shutting down this huge
Yep.
energy inside. And every time I felt something like that in life, I've done that.
Wow.
And it's turned out to be the most glorious element of, can't imagine doing something different. And what a beautiful journey. So trust in the pull, right? It takes courage to do it because you got to take a leap of faith.
Wow.
What happens if I go outside the lines,
Of course. So I know we don't know each other that well, but I grew up on a farm in rural Manitoba. So I was a farm kid. Okay.
Nice.
It was a Catholic town. It was very much Catholic and only Catholic. That was for miles and miles around. So there was no spirituality. There was no, anything but the church. And I had some reservations there, and I had some experiences there that, kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But I look at your story and I you talk about the pull. And my guides have told me, no, you've always had it. But it wasn't until my dark night of the soul, rock bottom. And I don't know if you have any moments like that, but for me, I needed I needed to fall on my face 153 times before I learned a lot of lessons and, fall apart basically and fully surrender. I remember just like on the deck of my home in like 2015, 16, dropping to my knees and literally putting my hands out in the sun. It was a January day and the sun shining. It was a beautiful day. And I just started bawling. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm fucking done.
Yeah.
Like I was done. Like I was so close to giving up this way, but instead I gave up that way.
Yeah.
And that was a moment, mixed with a kind of a near death, car accident that was, rocked me, a few other things. But it wasn't until that moment and a shift. I'm like, okay, I got to change some things in my life here. Like I can't keep fucking around with this, and this that is clearly killing me or not serving me.
Yeah.
Getting back into meditation. And within a month, that moment happened to me. I saw a guy talking about trauma and hypnosis and how it's stored in the body and all these things that I was like, whoa, what? I never heard of this shit. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then it just boom, boom, boom. And my wife was like, you going to work with him? Because she sees me just like everything's just like flying. I'm just like, yeah. And she's like, you got to work with him. I'm like, no. I'm going to go do this.
Yeah.
She's like, what? I'm like, I'm going to go fucking do this. Within 2-3 weeks, it was like on the phone, tracked him down, tracked the school down, and guess where I went to go do it?
Vancouver.
Yep. and same thing. I was a correctional officer at that time. I did 10 years total in the maximum security prison in Manitoba.
Wow.
So very much different, I would say, from where I'm at. And same thing. What do you mean you're going to study hypnotherapy? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to Vancouver. They're like, what? Like there wasn't much support, to be honest. It was like, you're nuts. You're crazy. You'll be back. You'll do this for 10 minutes. And you'll be back at work doing some OT. I took all my vacation, all my holiday time, all my bank time. I put it all into this, 7-8 weeks of flying to BC and going to do this. And it was just like, boom. And I just knew. I had no idea about hypnosis. I had no idea about the subconscious trauma. I really didn't know nothing. I knew I was going to train. That's it.
Wow.
And here we are.
Well, and this is the fascinating thing that I imagine for all of us is one person had told me in the past, and I think it's a quote from elsewhere, is like, you wouldn't pick a fruit before it's ready. And kind of looking back at my life is like, how come I didn't get started on some of this stuff earlier? And it's because it wasn't time.
100%.
And we need all these experiences. And so I used to give myself such a hard time because I had so many different jobs. So many different jobs.
Yeah, man.
Like I learned how to weld when I was a teenager. I worked on tons of farms. I built communication towers for a while, 300-400 feet up off the ground, up north, all over the province. I built log houses. I worked on the rigs,
Yeah, man.
Like there wasn't much I didn't do, but I'm so grateful because I learned something from every single shift on every single one of those jobs and how to connect with other humans and see where people are coming from. And I wouldn't trade that now, but definitely in my 20s, I was so hard on myself. Like before Chinese medicine kind of was ignited in me, I was struggling with like, what am I going to do?
Yeah. Same.
I haven't felt that
that
connected thing. And my dad was a good example for me. And my parents are great. I'm so grateful. My mom was a nurse for a long time. My dad worked at a gas plant and put food on the table, 12-hour shifts, days and nights for 35 years. And I remember seeing him though, just the soul kind of draining out of his system that last like 10 to 15 years of that job and the way the corporate world had changed. And when he started, it was a good job, and the pay I think was good and he could support us as a family. And there's 4 siblings. I have 4 of us kids.
Yeah.
And, I was really grateful for that. And he liked it, but I could see over time, the overtime and squeezing more from the people that were there and layoffs and these different, like the stress just kept going up. The pay didn't go up. And you could just see it wearing on him. And so that last decade, maybe 15 years was just a grind. And I remember feeling like, I love you, Dad. And this is so amazing that you're working so hard for us. Like I could recognize that even early on. And I was really thankful for it because we had food, you know,
Right. Of course.
and we had life and
Yep.
we had things that we wanted, and I got to play hockey and have
Yeah.
these like privileges, right?
Yep.
And we weren't poor, you know, I think we're just blue collar kind
Yeah.
of regular family, you know.
Yep.
And I remember thinking though, like that won't align with me because I see what it's doing. Like I can't do work that I'm not fully lit up by. And for
Yeah.
whatever reason, like I knew that really early on, which is I think what led me to do a lot of different jobs is like, nope,
Right.
not this. Nope, not this. Oh, this is kind of, I like these elements, but God, that's just not quite right. Why can't you just be okay with doing the normal thing? And for whatever reason, there's a lot of us, I think probably a lot of your viewers too,
Yeah.
the normal thing is not what we are here for.
No.
And I'm grateful for that, you know, and see these things like pop and open when they're ready, like these
Yeah.
seeds that sprout, and then suddenly you can't not do these things and it takes over, and it's so powerful. So
It
thanks
is.
for sharing that. Yeah.
Well, and you said it best. Like I struggled so much coming out of high school and not going to college, not going to university. Had no interest. No, I didn't like. Why was I going to go to? I have no idea what I want to study, and I looked down. Like I was down on myself. Like I was like, man, I don't know what I want to do. 2021. You think you should know, right? At that age, you're like, I should know. I had no idea, and I worked in hog barns, which was funny because I grew up in them. From starting in the restaurant business with my parents, into hog barns. Then it was at a grocery store, moved into bartending for my dad. Sewer and water construction. Hauling like pails of concrete, some pre-mixed cement down in these manholes. Oil field, pipeline, selling cars, like nonstop moving, installing cable and internet, like all these things, like in just boom, boom, boom.
I forgot something. I worked at a car dealership for a really short period of time.
Same.
Sold cars, and oh my God, I was brutal.
Awful. Oh,
I was
same.
brutal because I couldn't lie to people.
Same. I couldn't do it.
Couldn't. It was terrible. And I would tell people, don't buy that car. I talked to the mechanics. It's junk. It needs a ton of work. And then I would get in trouble for telling people the truth. And I was like, I knew I wasn't going to do it for a long time. I was just trying to make some money to go to school. But that is so funny. We're not similar at all.
Oh, dude. I remember I love people. So I love, like, people would come in and that awkward, hey, how are you? I'm turning, like that sucked. But when they got to the desk and we started chatting, half the time we were just chatting about life and had nothing to do with trying to sell them this car.
Yeah.
And my GM would come. So how's it going? I'm like, yeah, we're almost there. And like, they loved me, but they were never going to buy this car. We had a great chat. I was awful at it. I just couldn't do the bullshit. Like I couldn't play the back and forth game. Oh, let me see, maybe this, I just couldn't do it. I tried. And I think it lasted 6 months. The first 2 months was they actually gave the new salespeople a salary. Thank goodness. I think I was making $600 every 2 weeks, just enough to pay my rent at the time.
Ours was full commission at the time. And I remember working like 60 hours a week to try and get a sale, even though I hated it. And I think I worked a month and like crazy hours in a month, and I made like $600 on the month. Yeah. Maybe I sold the car too. And I was like, okay, this something needs to shift. It might have been a bit of a dark night for me then.
Yeah.
But
so
growth too.
Oh, 100%. And like you said, every single stop along the way has brought me something beautiful. Like some really good relationships. Others, it was just experience. But there's always something. But I find it really funny how, like, I just never knew. I was like, why can't I find my thing? I was traveling in Asia. We were doing one of the bigger backpacking trips I had done right before corrections. So I was 25 years old. We had just done 6 months, Thailand, Malaysia, Laos, doing all this amazing traveling. But then, the trip's coming to an end, and that anxiety creeps up. I'm 25 years old. What the fuck am I going to do? Yeah. Are we going back to the oil field? Because the oil field was still a pretty great place to work at the time. And I was like, maybe I'll go back. And there was a phone call saying, we can get you an interview here. I'm like, sure, I'll try that. And within 2 weeks, it was basically, that's what I was doing. And then I was 10 years of my life, being a correct. How the hell did I get in corrections? Like, that's not at all where I thought I was going. But
Yeah.
what I learned in that space in 10 years, being an empath, being a sensitive soul in a space as dark as that,
Yeah.
is hard to put into words. But yeah, that's some pretty
That's
heavy stuff.
your 10 years in the clinic,
Yeah.
of lots and lots of interactions that I can
Oh,
only imagine. And this is something I'm so grateful for of, being in the clinic space for a long
yeah.
time. You get to have some really deep conversations with people, seeing a lot of trauma, seeing a lot of
Yeah.
cases and heard a lot of stories that,
Yeah.
it's hard to put into words, and somebody sitting in front of you asking for help and support. And how do you hold these pieces when you can feel so much as well?
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for every single interaction I've ever had in the clinic. That
Yeah.
this is also what I love about it, is I get to connect with fellow humans
Yeah.
at a really, really deep level. And I think what's really interesting, I was seeing some of the comments on the side here, is, how do you find a doctor like this?
Yeah.
And what's really cool is, in Vernon right now, and there's a reason we're both in Vernon, probably some of the reasons we know and some we don't know, but I was really
Yeah.
drawn here as well about 6 years
Mhm.
ago. And again, it was a knowing.
Yep.
It's time to move. I was in the Lower Mainland, things were going really well, had 10 years of practice down there, huge clinic, and something was like, "Hey, it's time to go." And it was really hard for me to leave. It took me actually 2 years to kinda fully transition to be here. But one of the first times I went snowboarding up here, I met this other guy named Coleman, and he's an acupuncturist in town, TCM guy, and we both were snowboarding and sat on the same chairlift unknowingly, and we get talking, and he starts talking about Chinese medicine and going to Chinese medicine school, and I'm looking over at him like, "You gotta be kidding me." We both had beards, goggles and stuff,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, guess what? You know, Chinese medicine
God,
doctor right
dude.
here." And he's like, "No way. I know you're not making that up, because like, who would say that, you know?" And since then, Grant, who's at my clinic, awesome guy, beard. And then there's
Yeah.
another guy in town I haven't met in person yet, but it sounds like he's from my neck of the woods in Rigby
Yeah.
area of all things in Alberta. And so there's 4 guys that are like Alberta kind of farm, like blue
Yep.
collar guys that
Yep.
are TCM practitioners in
Yeah.
Vernon now. And so when I think about how do you find a doctor like this, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
coming more. And so that tells me there's things happening and
Yes.
changing, that doctors are learning, practitioners are learning, that there's
Yeah.
so much more than what they were taught.
Right.
And what they taught, what we're taught and what I was learning in school, super valuable, super valuable. But it kind of gave me this opportunity to then build on that and learn more and find out there is so much more to health than this box or this box.
Right.
And it's beautiful meeting other people and meeting you as well, that
Right.
are working outside the box, that are looking at
Yeah.
things differently, using hypnosis or using other tools and skills to channel through our own being
Yeah.
and ignite our own gifting, because our gifting
Exactly.
is here to be of service. So it's pretty cool. There you go, another guy with the beard from the
Right.
prairies, of why are we all hanging out in Vernon? This is pretty cool.
Ridiculous.
So
I love it.
there's stuff happening, so I
Yeah.
think there's more people out there like this. There's more practitioners out there that are willing to look beyond the regular, how you feeling?
Right.
Great, let's do some treatment, and we just leave it at that.
Right.
We're looking for depth. I want depth
Right.
in my life.
100%.
I want depth in every relationship I have, whether it's a
Oh,
patient or a
man.
friend. I need that. I can't do anything different now. And I'm grateful that there's people that are willing to be authentic and deep in their relationships.
It's really the only thing I'm trying to cultivate now. I can't, I think we've all been there enough in our days in the past where, small talk bullshit.
Yeah.
I just can't. Like it's hard for me. And if I go into spaces where that's still the norm, yeah, I feel it, and I feel very much out of tune with it. And it's not to
Yeah.
judge anybody else. That's fine what they're doing, but I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like I'd rather create these foundations that are solid in honesty and truth right off the fucking hop than pretend to be this or say this to be liked or loved, because that was a pattern for me forever, is not enough. I think there's a
Yeah.
big male wound, or masculine wound around not being enough for me anyway. And so now it's like, fuck, the more authentic I become, and it's always evolving, that authenticity, I think. But
Yeah.
now it's like, no, let's be us now, right off the hop. And
It's so
those,
refreshing,
oh,
and that's why well, that's one of the reasons I believe I felt called to speak about this quite a bit at, the Equinox event
right,
is authenticity and creating that safe container so everybody there could just, "Okay, I'm just gonna be me,
yeah,
and that's enough.
yeah,
I don't need to do anything or say
yeah,
anything, and I'm just gonna be real in my interactions today," and it really felt like that energy was kinda moving through that room the whole time, whether words were shared or not. You can almost feel like the relief of, a lot of sensitive people or people that look at things differently or
right,
feel things differently in life, that there's a space for them also. And I see a lot of people that have that inside, but they haven't shared it.
yeah.
And then they can share it in a space like that. And it's like invited. And it's really cool feeling that and being
It's
in front of the room like that and seeing it happen.
it's one of the most gratifying, beautiful things that I've been able to bring into my life has been because of my vulnerability and ability to share and be open. Whether it's my abuse as a kid, or whether it's my trauma or other things in my life, and my battles with drinking as a kid, and everything just leading up to where I am. The DMs I have from friends and old acquaintances that I never would have thought would be like, "Hey, I just want you to know." And maybe it starts by saying thank you, just a simple thank you. And I'm like, okay. Like, that to me is I can't put a price tag on it. I can't explain what those little DMs from people who are struggling, who do have that something, but they haven't yet allowed themselves to feel it, or express it.
Yeah,
That to me is super special.
it is
It's
special.
giving someone almost permission. It's not putting myself, hey, look, I can do it, but it's I don't know, it's something just magical happens when you do that.
Well, I think it's part of the awakening. I
Yeah,
don't want to sound too cliche because the word awakening is being tossed around a lot, but
remembering, awakening, yeah,
there's a lot of different words we
sure,
can describe, and at the same time, I think this energy on the planet is inviting more
yeah,
authenticity and more real connection because we're all pretty hungry for it, I think, for the
yep,
longest time.
yep,
And it's really beautiful to just, following this. And I think this is why we're here talking right now is
yeah, brother,
both just kind of following the energy and following the impulse or the feeling and the pull. And hey, I'm curious. There's something more here. I can feel your energy as well.
yeah,
And boom, in a short period of time, like you're saying in the beginning, then we can impact other people's lives in really powerful ways. And it can be, short term or long term or anything in between. And
yeah.
all of it is beautiful in its own way.
So let me go back a little bit, and you saying, so when you were younger, so you and I are, again, very sensitive, and that was not something I always embraced, and I'm sure it was probably similar with you. I tell this story a lot. Like, I'll cry at a commercial. I will cry. I was the kid at the hockey tournament winning gold medal and crying for the other team losing. Like, that was just me my whole life. And I would hide that a lot because, I mean, I should be happy, or I'd watch the Stanley Cup finals as a Canadian kid, and I'd watch the,
Mm.
the other team in disappointment, and my heart would fucking break. And in my whole life, that was me. But I hid that a lot. And I was like, man, like, suck it up. Like, why are you so were you supported in that growing up? Was that something you embraced right off the hop? Like, how was that for you?
I think for a long time it was confusing for me around like just feeling so much. But like I said earlier, I didn't know what I was feeling some of the time. I just knew that I felt things very intensely.
Yeah.
And, I think loss is one of those things that can bring that forward for a lot of
Mm,
people, and we're all gonna experience loss and grief in
yeah.
different ways, but, I remember being 10 years old and my grandfather passed, and I was so affected by that.
Yeah.
Like, I think other people would maybe view me and my tears and the intensity of what I was feeling
Right.
as, like, that's a bit too much, like, you
Right.
should especially as a boy,
Yeah.
like and, my parents were pretty good. It's not I don't remember them, like, really saying, "Shut that down,"
Right.
but I could also see that they didn't emote nearly in the same way that I did. So you start sort of tracking to the people that you're around, and like you said, like I kind of pulling it together and then maybe stopping expressing, and then we start
Yeah,
putting it deeper in the system, and that leads to issues.
of course.
And this is what I practice in Chinese medicine, is the stuck energy or the stagnated energy and
Mm-hmm.
organs and the
Mm-hmm.
emotions and everything. And I'm so grateful I've learned all that, because now when I reflect back on my life early on, that energy had to go somewhere. And
Right.
I think I channeled it into sports and competition, and
Yep.
played
Same.
all the sports, played
Yeah.
hockey,
Yeah.
track and field. And I loved doing that.
Sure.
But I also think it's like I needed to move my physical body so
Yep.
much to try
Same.
and like move that
Wow.
stuck
And
energy somewhere,
I
and
never even put those two together. But like
totally.
you, I was the athlete. Like I played it all. I didn't care. If it was throwing a ball and catching it for 3 hours, I'm in.
What I
Like,
think we needed that, because there's a lot of energy, and that physical energy can be a huge transformational piece for emotional energy. And now I
mm,
consciously do that, but it was kind of unconsciously done. But it's interesting, we find what we need as an outlet one way or the other. And the other thing
right.
is, like, I spent so much time in nature.
Hmm,
And again, kind of unconsciously, I just really love being in nature. And
right.
even though I had siblings and, we grew up in a rural community, there's people around. When I look back, I spent a lot of time solo in nature. And I think that's probably why, is like I needed that like defragging time to scrub that energy out of the system, even though I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time. I can see it now, hanging out by a creek we had that ran through our property, throwing rocks, just like
Yeah,
sitting in the
man.
forest with animals for long, like hours.
Yeah.
And when I look back, I'm like, that's kind of unusual. I just like sit on a log in a forest for like 4 hours at a time when I was like 13 years old.
Wow.
And now it makes a lot of sense, is my body was leading me and guiding me of the things that I really needed to kind of stay healthy. Otherwise, it probably would have been overwhelming. And I remember being overwhelmed by how much I would feel at times, or starting to
Right.
have dreams
Same.
about things and
Yep.
getting
Yeah.
information that was overwhelming to me. And I didn't know what to do with. And that still happens at times. I still don't know what to do with some of the information I get,
Right.
but I'm better able to hold that
Yeah.
now. But yeah, what a process, especially early like that. It's not well understood by people around, and
Right.
certainly by us either.
Well, and I look back now and I'm thinking about all the forts I made by myself in the bush, in the
I was a fort
backyard.
building pro. I could
Yeah. I bet you we could have built some pretty sick forts
Oh man,
together.
we would have had like a Taj Mahal fort for
Yeah.
sure.
And even the sandbox for me was a really interesting place. As even older, like I just loved the sandbox. But I remember I played by myself a lot. And man, the amount of hours I would spend with a tennis ball and a baseball bat, being Joe Carter and John Olerud from the early Blue Jays days, and
Oh
hitting home
yeah.
runs over my house, and I would just go back and forth, both sides of my house, hitting tennis balls over hours and hours and hours. And I'm thinking about it, holy shit! Like I always needed to be doing something, and now I'm connecting a dot to this past weekend. My kids are gone camping. I'm alone, and it was this battle within my guilt as a father. Should I go with the kids camping and be with them for this weekend? It's one of the last camping weekends here. So I battled with this. I should probably go, but this inner voice saying, no, you need to stay. You need to sit, and you need this. And I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they leave. I'm breaking down. I'm sad. I'm like, okay, what's going on? Something's coming here. And sure enough, some big layers from my childhood, some childhood deep shit started to surface, and I had to be alone. And what did I try to do? I went to the gym. I went to the driving range. I went on my one wheel. I was doing my best to escape this shit, and not even really being aware. But guess what I was doing? Being active, moving my body as much as I possibly could. I'm like, what do I do now? What do I do now? What do I do now? And then I was like, oh shit, I got to sit. And that's when this layer from my 9-year-old self started to come up, which I did a lot of work at your event a few weeks ago. But it's now I'm looking at it, I'm like, hey, that pattern's still here, like I had to move my body.
It's a tough one,
Yeah.
because we want to find the balance between like moving the body in a healthy way. It is a
Yeah.
really powerful, healthy outlet to alchemize energy in the
Sure.
system. And you and I spoke about this a little bit, just briefly, that stillness piece, and
Mm-hmm.
that's entering my being so much more
Yeah.
now. And that ability to kind of stay still, especially when things start coming up and getting uncomfortable. And, I've done like Tony Robbins events and things like that and listened to some of the tapes back in the day. And he used to say that too. Like, what's the first thing most people do when they get in the car? Turn the radio on.
Yeah.
You want some background distraction
Yep.
noise. What's the first thing people do when they get
Yep.
home? Quite often turn the TV on.
Sure.
Background noise, because we know that if we're quiet for a period of time,
Yeah.
there's usually something there that
Oh,
wants
yeah.
to come up, and it's not easy, or it's not always easy, and it can be uncomfortable, super uncomfortable
Fucking super
to kind of
uncomfortable.
stay in it. And a good buddy of mine who's a bit of a soul coach, him and I talk about this. It's like being in the crucible, being in the forge or being in the fire. And what's coming up right now is this element, and I can't remember if I heard this somewhere in a podcast or a book in the past, but it was the idea that our life is the forge, and that
Mm-hmm.
we're all, swords, if you look at it that
Right.
way. We get forged through our childhood,
Yep.
and then that's the shape we take. But we can reshape that, we can
Yes.
repattern that, but it
Yes.
does require getting back in the fire and back in the forge
Getting
hot enough to
yeah.
reshape that thing. And I've been there in my life at different
Yeah.
times. I'm like, oh man, going back in the forge. All right, let's reshape this. Maybe I am shaping something better, and I'm doing it consciously, but standing in that forge or that crucible of life when it's the hottest place that you could possibly be.
Yeah.
Not comfortable, but so powerful. And now I'm more confident going back into the forge when it starts coming. I'm like, okay, I've been here before, and this is part of life. Like, you can be better at the uncomfortable bits.
Well, and that brings this to mind for me is when shit surfaces, I'm at the point now where I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's just go. Let's get in it. Let's do it. Let's do what we got to do. But that's also brought me into, bringing expectation on how that healing is going to happen. Because I've used hypnosis in the past, or I've done some, inner child work here and did, now I find when something comes up, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this and we're going to rip it out and it's all good.
Yeah.
Nope. And you put this in this expectation sometimes, because I do want to sit in it. I do know it's coming up for a reason. It's time now. I'm strong enough now for this to surface. That's why I truly feel like your higher self is only going to give you, well, what's the code? God will only give you what you can handle, right? Or something along those lines. And it's like, I feel like your inner being is going to only allow what needs to come up at the right time, and you're ready.
Yeah. Well, and I've seen this with patients so many times where they come in and they're struggling, and they're like, I don't know what happened. I was doing so well.
Right.
And now all the stuff's coming up and I'm struggling. And I'm like, it's coming up because you were doing well.
Yes.
And that's beautiful if we can recognize we're not failing. It's just, you know what? Now you are strong. Just like you said, you have space. You're strong enough. You're ready. Now this next layer can come to the surface, and it can be a big piece. And then we continue to make progress. So I find symptoms in the body.
Yeah.
And when these elements come up that we feel like we're struggling with, immediately get labeled as failure.
Yep.
Or I'm not doing well.
Yeah.
And part of it is, I think the medical establishment in general has taught people and taught society that they're not to have any symptoms of any kind. That you should get rid of them at all costs. Whether it's anxiety or depression or a sore elbow or any number of things. And I've learned that that's very much not true. Of course, this is almost becoming commonplace, maybe for people like us in this way, that physical symptoms are always an invitation that there's something going on emotionally, mentally, energetically, always.
Yeah, brother.
And like no exceptions. And I try and wiggle myself out of this one sometimes where I'm like, oh, my elbow's sore just because I'm working out too much. And then I do a bunch of treatment and acupuncture and all the things I know, and it doesn't do anything. And I'm like, shit, I know this is something I'm not willing to face in my life, or I need some support or help. And I'll reach out and I'll have a session in some way that's more on the mental emotional picture. And then it clears up totally.
Yeah.
And I still, like, I know this stuff, but I still marvel at it because it's so true. And then I get to laugh at myself some more of like, oh man, here we go.
Isn't it? It's so funny, right? Like we work in this every single day, me, in the trauma field, or the emotional work, and understanding how we can suppress all these emotions and suppress these memories. Even like these blocks of time can be completely gone from our consciousness until it's time. And even my stuff starts to surface like this last year, about a year ago, a year ago today almost. I had probably the hardest trauma that I've ever experienced surface for the first time. 30 years, 30
Wow.
years, bits and pieces of like,
Wow.
oh, okay. But I'm like, nope, I can't be, just kind of put it aside. And then another little bit, little piece comes in. I'm like, can't be. I see this every day. I know how this works. Of course it can be. It's happening to me. It's okay.
Yeah.
And so it's wild. Like but you still kind of find a way to avoid it at times. But
Yeah.
man, it's amazing what your mind can do to protect you until it's time, until it's ready.
Yep. Yeah. And there's wisdom in all
Oh
these
yeah.
parts too. And
Yeah.
weaving them all together is part of the
Yeah.
magic.
Yeah. So you said a few things at your event that so one thing I want to touch on again is when you were leading, there's 120 people here bearing their souls, essentially, here to hold space and to heal and do what they need to do. And a few things really caught my eye. The first thing, and I talked to you a little bit about this, is my envy, my jealousy, call it whatever you want. But there's a part of me watching you lead and watching a guy like Dirk lead, like two men I absolutely admire. And I remember being there and being aware of my body, being aware of my energy, and then those little pieces surfacing and kind of just like, and I'm like, oh shit, interesting, and to be aware of it and as it's happening without really judgment, because I wasn't judging myself. I was like, oh, okay, those pieces are there, because those pieces of me going, why is it not me yet?
Yeah.
Why am I not leading this event yet? Why am I not doing this yet? Because I have these dreams. So I'd like for you to touch on maybe times where you've had the same type of awareness.
Definitely have had this type of awareness many times.
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple pieces here, because I know jealousy gets labeled as, a bad thing.
Right.
And I'm just trying to, feel if there's any other words that could be useful, but we'll work with that one for the moment.
Sure.
That it can also inform us of direction we want to move in.
Yeah.
And so there's often some guidance there. And I think there can be some inspiration there, and it's easy to then feel like the inadequacy.
Yep. And
I
that's
know
what was
that.
coming up.
Yeah, I
Yep.
know that one really well.
Big
So
time.
sometimes this packet of energy comes forward
Mm-hmm.
that is not actually incredibly simple. It contains each of these elements and maybe a few other ones, and it can be a little bit confusing when it shows up to feel actually all sides of what is surfacing. And then you've had really beautiful awareness and being able
Yep.
to see
Yep.
and feel what is happening for you in a moment like that. And yeah, I've been at different events. I've been to retreats and things where I kind of felt that way. I was like, I could be doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I should be doing this.
Right.
And then I would go about, why am I not doing this yet?
Right.
And I would follow that inadequacy spiral for a little bit of time
Yeah.
on, well, there must be something deficient in me.
Oh yeah.
That I haven't created this yet.
Right.
Or I'm too scared to.
Mm.
And then I would honestly look at that stuff sometimes, because there was real fear of, you aren't the person to do this, or you're not ready for this, or all the different like layers of internal chatter that would happen that would prevent me from stepping beyond my comfort zone.
Right.
And
Well,
so like earlier this year, doing the event before we did Equinox, we did an event called Yankstis, and same thing, we had like 120 people there. It was my first bigger in-person event like that, because I've done tons of deep dive, 10 people, 15, 20 people, one-on-ones, thousands of hours in the clinic, but doing a bigger event. And I remember feeling like that was a step out of my comfort zone. And so I purposely booked it so that I would do it.
yeah.
And then like, I knew it was going to make me a bit uncomfortable, but I knew if I book this, I will become that person that will be on that stage that day. But if I don't book it and take action on it, that's saying like, if not now, then when? Like, what else am I waiting for?
Mm-hmm.
I got to read another book, or
Yep.
You know, how I need another 10,000 hours in
Right.
working with clients or something, like, when am I gonna be,
Yep.
like, ready?
Hmm.
And I felt this way having kids, you know, years ago when we were
Of
having a
course.
family. I felt so not ready, but it was also the most beautiful time
Yep.
and the most beautiful gift, that we receive in life is often when it's unexpected or we don't feel quite ready. Because when is that? You know, because 'cause we'll often keep moving the bar. I'm almost there,
Yep. Yep.
not quite.
Yeah,
So
that part of us is always going to tell you one more book, one more course, one more, one more retreat on your own to the, one more ayahuasca journey, one more, there's always that. But every single time that I have taken those leaps, of course it's uncomfortable, but they've always brought me the most.
yeah,
They've always brought me the most value. Like, it's just, wow. Like, it's 99.9% of it is never as scary as you created in your mind. We know that it's
that's
never.
right.
And you always find your flow because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You end up in that energy of just receiving and being creative and getting into that, alignment.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
and there's
man.
that fear of failure, of course, that
Sure.
can I think had stopped me in the past a lot, is that the fear would overrule the excitement and the energy of really wanting to do something impactful. And then through a lot of personal work and big
Yeah.
challenges,
Yeah.
I started to see, no, I can do things even if I am afraid or
Yep.
even if I'm scared of it.
Yep.
It doesn't mean it has to stop me from taking action. And then that saying, of course, action is one of the greatest antidotes to fear.
Yeah.
And of course, love and
Yeah.
action. Yeah, that's a powerful combination. It was like, well, let's take some leaps here. Maybe I'll find out this isn't what I want to do,
Hmm.
and I'm going to pivot and go in another direction. Or maybe I'll find out this like lights me up and I love this, and it's
Yeah, man.
like so much energy coming through. And I'm grateful that that's been the case. And yeah, we'll see what happens. I got to keep
Yeah.
going.
One more thing I want to touch on the event. I mean, there's lots I could touch on, but the way you were able to be on stage and pause. You're leading 120 people, some pretty deep inner child work. There's music playing, and there's times where you were just able to sit for, like, man, stand there. It almost seemed like 30, maybe to a minute even, and just breathe and take in what you brought to life. So I know how when we create anything, how we can get kind of absorbed in it. How important is it for you to take that step back and just be in the
Mm.
energy and to receive, because you're receiving at that moment? You're able to just be like, wow, maybe without labels, but you're just there and taking it all in. And I remember watching him like, fuck, that's powerful right there.
Mm. Yeah,
Not the
thank you.
words, but you just standing there and receiving it and being in it was really profound for me.
The example or the image that comes to mind is, we did talk about surfing at the event, and
Yeah.
I love surfing. I haven't
Yeah.
surfed a lot, but when you're standing on the beach before you get in, and maybe you're holding
Hmm.
your surfboard, or even if you don't surf, you're standing on a beach somewhere, especially by the ocean or a big lake, and you can feel that breeze sometimes moving behind you and moving through you out into the water.
Hmm.
And then you're feeling and watching the waves, and you can feel it with your body, and you can almost like taste it, and you can hear the sounds, and then sometimes the wind will shift and then it's coming off the water towards you. And in some of those moments, that's what it's like for me, is just like really feeling the energy that's collectively created in an event that way, in the building, in the space, in our energy, in the processes of whatever we were doing at each time. And I really wanted to feel that energy so that I could also interact with it and then help open or shift or move if needed, but also just like standing in it and being present, because being
Yeah.
present sometimes is the hardest thing to do,
Hmm.
especially when we're really focused on like guiding or leading or something. We can almost, be leading ourselves and constantly be in that next step, but miss the present moment. And so it's definitely a practice. And I'm going to keep practicing that. Is, can I just be in the moment where I don't have to say something? I don't necessarily have to do something. Let's just actually invite the feel
Hmm.
and notice what this experience feels like for everybody else and for me at the same time.
Yep.
And then let that energy move. And then the next words would like kind of surface
Yep.
again. But I didn't want to force that, and
Yeah.
I didn't want to rush anything through, because it's easy to do that too when you're excited and you're in front of 120 people. There's a lot of energy. But I think this is also the practices of big challenges that maybe we've moved through in life, where you can be in that fire or you can be in the forge, but you're not rushing to step out of it. You're not rushing to end the silence, or you're not
Right.
rushing to get out of the uncomfortable feeling that it can be sometimes
Yeah.
standing in that space of the void. But I appreciate you reflecting that, of like how
Yeah.
powerful it can be received on the other side, as I'm like kind of taking it in on that side and facilitating something like that, that there's a dynamic play of energy that's happening.
Oh, it was you receiving and I was receiving what you like. It is almost this full on moment, and I think everybody else probably felt it too. You being in that allowed us to be in that. You know, it was really cool, really really
Oh,
cool.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's where medicine can be invoked in each of us when we're present and just observing each other. Then I think that's actually what creates miracles a lot of the
Hmm.
time. If we can be present together, then
Yeah.
pretty limitless.
Yeah. Well, I did not think we'd go. It's already an hour. I can't. But that's usually what happens when we have good conversation and the flow takes over. And there's a few questions I ask my guests on the show, and I'm tweaking one of them. I usually would ask something vulnerable from my guest, but I think you've been pretty vulnerable the whole time. If there's one tip, one piece of wisdom that you've held on to that really has helped you along your journey? Is there one thing that sticks out that you could share with anyone or with everyone here?
Maybe I'll tap into the clinic hours for this one. There's a patient I saw years ago, and she had been born in Germany, and she was in her late 80s when I saw her, and this is years ago now. Healthy and vibrant though,
Hmm.
and really clear.
Yep.
And the toxicity testing that I do in the clinic and some of the methods I get information about people's bodies, and I did all that, and I was like, you know what, you're in really good shape here. Like, your organs are good, your system's healthy, circulation's good. This is pretty remarkable for being the age that you are. What was your trick? Like,
Yeah.
what do you have for advice for me? And she said, I saw this really good doctor back in the 50s in Germany, and he told me the best thing I could do is listen to my body and trust my body. And so that's what I've done.
Wow.
And here I am. And so I've always done that. And I had already learned this to some degree with patients
Sure.
and through my own system, but that time it's like it landed a bit differently, and it
Hmm.
landed deeper because I could see the living embodiment of somebody who had actively been doing that. And this is what I've seen in the clinic for years, is people have been talked out of trusting their body,
Right.
and they feel things going on, they have symptoms, and they'll
Right.
often actually know what it's related to. But when they've expressed it to other people in the medical field, possibly, they say, "Oh, no, it couldn't possibly be that."
Right. Right.
But you know what I often find? It is those things.
Right.
And patients do know what's going on with themselves. And it's just coming back to trusting your body. Your body speaks to you, and it has so much wisdom. And the more we can learn to listen to that and trust that, that's huge for our lives here.
That's amazing. I love that so much. And that's something I've definitely learned, even with my eating and my exercise and my movement and everything. Is my body always tells me what's going on. Like it really does. It's pretty damn good. It's pretty bang on every single time.
Oh yeah.
And that's something I've developed, is trusting the inner guidance and the guidance of what you're being shown and everything. So that's beautiful, man. Thank you. Last question. My show is called Alive with Joey, and the last question I ask my guests is, what does it really mean to be alive for you? Like for Kevin, Dr. Kevin Preston, to be alive, what does that mean?
Ooh, so good. I was on the beach in Santa Monica by the pier years ago,
Hmm.
and I had lost somebody pretty dear to me. He was an older gentleman, an elder, I guess we could call him, and but we had a great connection. And I was walking on the beach, and the sun was setting. It was beautiful, and I was feeling so alive.
Mm.
I was there for an event. I just felt so open and vital. So vitality is a big one for
Hmm.
me. I want to live with a huge amount of vitality running through my energy. And I felt his energy come
Yeah.
because he had actually lived on the Santa Monica Pier back in like the 60s. and in the tower of the merry-go-round that's there.
Yeah.
And would tell me he had the best stories. He was definitely one of the most interesting men I'd ever met. And he was in a rock band, and he had traveled and helicopter
Yeah.
pilot, but he lived in the merry-go-round and would tell me like it would kind of move at night and you'd hear the lights and everything. And I'm walking by the pier and I'm looking at the merry-go-round and I feel him like right beside me.
Yeah.
And I'm looking out at the waves then, and I'm feeling so alive and taking in the sounds and the sights around me. And I could hear his voice, or it was a voice inside or outside of me. I don't even know. And he's like, "You really got to live your life, man." And I was struggling with different decisions at the time, but
Sure.
I felt it. And it was like the place, the moment, all those things that he came through really clearly. And so it kind of is answering the question in the same way you asked it, is like, you got to really live your life
Yeah.
in that open-hearted and
Yep.
vital way and not
Yep.
be afraid to do the
Yep.
things that are really exciting for your heart. And so I guess that saying is, follow your heart's greatest excitement. And to me, that's really living.
Yeah, dude, I love that so much. Thank you for that story. That's beautiful, man. That's it for tonight. Kevin, hang out in the studio for a sec here as I say my goodnight. Thanks everybody for being back. I know we had a little bit of a break, but I appreciate each and every one of you. Everyone here, everyone on watching the recording after. I'm so blessed to be able to hold space and have amazing guests like Dr. Kevin here. Just to be able to have, your light in this space was just, I really appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And
Yeah.
I appreciate all of you very much. Lots of love.
All right. We'll have you back on. You have no choice. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks, guys.